for starters, we get you to all introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your work. And whoever wants to start can start. Do you want to go this way or?
Go for it.
I guess we can start.
Okay. All right, let's start with you.
My name is Marcus Alexander Hart. I usually write comedy books and comedy things. I've been a TV writer. I worked at Disney Channel for a bit. And this is my first book that's not a comedy. This is the one that I'm selling upstairs. It's a little bit funny, but it's a dark paranormal thriller. But it's about a Hollywood family, a strange Hollywood family, and the father is a sitcom writer. So it's sort of a little drawn from experience, and it's got some funny elements, but it's more of a darker, more adult tale than what I'm used to writing.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'm Jae Xerrano. This is my first novel, Comedic Divinity Fateless. I have a fascination with religions in general and spirituality, and so I wanted to write my own take on Dante's Inferno, but from a more modernized, pop culture-y kind of snark. So this was my attempt, and it's the first in a series. The sequel, Chaos, Curses, and Cleavage, is done. And then the third book will actually be released probably about 3 months after. I'm just waiting on the covers to be finished. But I like to tell stories that are about serious things in absurd ways.
Adam Watson. I own Darkslinger Comics. I'm the creator-writer of Ghost Assassin, Chronicles of Von Helsing, Noble Vine Muerte, The Pauper, Who Will Save the World, and some other titles. I write in pretty much every single genre there is. And I've been doing this since 2006.
I'm Michael A. Jacob. I write mostly sci-fi. I have 3 series going on. I have a space opera trilogy. I have a 6-book social sci-fi. I got 1, 2, and 3 out. 4 is coming out before the end of the year. And then I have a vampire series. Yes, there are also aliens. And I'm almost done with book 2. I got 1 chapter left. So that'll be out in October. I've been writing since I was 12. I started publishing about 4.5 years ago. And I have 10. Did I say 10? Yeah, I got 10 books out. I don't remember. I write a lot. Yeah. And I love sci-fi and horror. That's my thing.
Okay. So yeah, we can talk a little bit about horror in this panel as well. But before I ask you questions, is there any questions from the audience so far? Do we have anything that they'd like to ask?
Your name again?
Michael A. Jacob. Maquel.
M.A.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
But pronounced like Michael.
Sorry,
Yes.
now what was the last name?
Jacob.
Thank you.
J.C. No case.
No case. No case. Yeah.
Okay, so can you each tell us about your first success, like how you got started? What was the first thing that happened that, like your first time you were discovered or you were published?
We're starting with me again.
Yeah.
You're in.
What happens when you sit at the first spot?
The first novel that I wrote was an apocalypse comedy. It came out in 2006, but it took place in 1999 because it was about the Y2K bug caused the end of the world. It was this apocalypse comedy about these 4 slackers that survived and trying to find their way to safety. And I self-published it, but a very small publisher who specialized in apocalypse comedy called Permuted Press. They found it and they liked it and they offered to publish it for me. So I discontinued my self-published version, and then they published it, and that was my first success in writing novels.
Nice.
Let's see. My first success was finishing a manuscript of any kind. It's the hardest thing, I think, for a writer to do is to close the book and say it's done. So to be able to do that, I got a lot of confidence just from being able to finish that. I went through the self-publishing route because I had a timetable. My stepfather had ALS. I wanted to write it or dedicate it to him before he got too bad to where he couldn't read it. So that was my choice. I have a couple things that I've shopped around to in completely different genres and completely different storylines that I've been shopping around to other publishers. But I'm one of those people that if it doesn't go to them, I don't get discouraged. I can always print it myself if I want to. But the best thing that you can get is the first person to buy your book. The first person who buys your book is getting something that no other person will ever get. I mean, it's a level of gratitude that you cannot even imagine until you've done it.
Probably when I started my publishing company in 2006, I decided to open up my own publishing company instead of going through one of the pre-existing comic publishers because I think their scope is too limited in what they do and the way they market their books and sell their books. The first real big success was probably actually getting my comics sold in a tattoo shop because I never heard of anyone else doing that. So awesome. I'm going to go with that.
Trailblazer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's a pretty good untapped potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually got in quite a few tattoo shops after that.
That's a good choice.
Cool. My first taste of success was when I first published this one. This is not the original cover. You would trust me. You don't want to see the other cover. But still, it sold. I was at the Home and Garden show, and they were doing like a book garden thing, and there was like they wanted local authors there, and I had my one book. Yeah, and I had maybe like 10 copies of it, and I sold all 10.
Nice.
And I got my check at the end. It's like, you sold 10 books, and I was like, yeah. So I was all excited about that, and then I realized that the cover sucked. So you get when you finally realize, oh, people like this book, and then but then you hear it's like, yeah, the story was great. You know, that cover was.
Oh.
Yeah.
So was that actually in the reviews of the book, like you read before like putting the cover down, or?
No, it was other authors going. Other authors like, you know, you might want to.
Regardless of what they say, you judge books by cover.
Yeah,
you
How you do it.
Yeah, and the only reason I sold that book is because I was so enthusiastic and excited about my own work that people were like, you know what, I'm going to try it.
You sold yourself.
That's the only way for an independent person to make money to begin with.
Yeah.
They have to buy you.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a name, you don't have a publisher behind you half the time.
Nope.
The only thing you've got going for you is you know what you wrote appeals to this person, and you're going to explain to them why they have to buy it.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask who inspires you and who are you a fan of?
Go for it, Owen.
She's like, ooh.
In general or as an author?
Either way, I'll just leave it pretty broad.
I like the kinds of books that break out and like a wide audience can read them. That's not like there's everyone has like their own little genres, their own niches that they like to read that can sort of get stagnant. And I like when there's something that explodes that like a lot of people like. A really big dumb example is like Harry Potter. That there's people who are adults who are dressing in Hogwarts costumes, and it's also like small children like it, but there's a very broad audience for that. And I like when people.
It's like The Martian. Like all these people are reading it that never read sci-fi before.
Yeah.
It just exploded.
And when I read that, I couldn't believe it. Like I was sitting on a train and like I'm gonna miss my stop because I'm so engrossed, and I'm like, he's like converting one gas to another. Like, why am I so interested in this? This is the most boring thing in the world, but I can't put it down.
I know.
So,
I was there
yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
My biggest thing is the people I look up to are people who know how to do what they do well. And not trying to force things out of them. Artists or authors, it's usually people like Neil Gaiman, people like Terry Brooks, Raymond E. Feist when it comes to fantasy. And it's because they tell their story the way they want to tell their story. You don't feel like anything's ever forced. You don't feel like it's trying too hard. And I think that's just the mark of a storyteller who's able to tell their story well. And if you can tell your story well, you're an author at at that point. It's just nice enough to have a product in hand to actually do it. That's the only difference between a writer and an author is this.
Product.
Yep.
That'd probably be my best friend Ty Wakefield, who was a comic creator who died 7 years ago. And in the last couple of years of his life, while he was battling osteosarcoma, which is a really aggressive bone cancer, he created a superhero comic character that fought cancer, so the kids in the hospital who were with him would kind of like have something to envision when they were going in for chemotherapy. So Ty wasn't the greatest comic creator by any means, greatest writer, artist, but he put more heart into it than anybody I'd ever seen. So every morning I get up, look at the tattoo that I have for him, which is currently not visible, and think you can do better. So
That's pretty inspirational.
That's awesome. Well, mine were a little darker. My inspirations are, Stephen King, Clive Barker, Ursula K. Le Guin, then, George Romero.
Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, the horror in there, yeah. I grew up watching the first Aliens in 1979.
Oh, yes. In my opinion, a perfect movie in all ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah, and from there I transitioned to, of course, my other favorite, which is Event Horizon. Because sci-fi and horror go together. I'm sorry, they just do. And I read Stephen King when I was like 9. And I read The Stand, which is not something a 9-year-old should read. But it resonated with me. And for some reason I just started like, oh, you know what? If I'd have done that scene, I'd have wrote it this way. It was weird that I thought that. But so by the time I was 12, I was writing stuff I probably should have been writing. But that's one other thing. But yeah.
That's how I feel about me at 9. I read War and Peace. Don't ask.
I think a lot of us, that read Stephen King when they were really young, a lot of it is because those books were everywhere. They were on free.
Yeah, they were everywhere,
bookshelves.
yeah.
They were on your parents, your grandparents, your aunt and uncles, and they were easy to pick up and read, and no one really, if your parents didn't monitor your reading material that closely.
Yeah, my mom wasn't home, so.
Yeah, you could get away with reading Stephen King at a pretty young age.
Yeah, it was my grandmother's book.
Oh,
Yeah.
your grandmother.
It was my grandmother's book,
The
yeah.
Stand, all right. Okay, so this is a good one for people that write genre fiction, but what do you enjoy most? What is most fun for you, writing, like creating the characters or building the worlds? Because world building and...
they're one and the same.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, they're kind of, yeah.
So you didn't start with like a character and then build the world around it, or vice versa?
When the character comes into my head, at least,
It has
the
a
world
world
around them are
Yeah.
attached to it. Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Well,
Yeah.
it does. The world has to mold to the character in a sense because it's this character's journey through the world. So it has to be, what they're trying to accomplish, what are their fears and what are their goals, and the whole world needs to align to that, or else the story's it's gonna be boring. It's
Well, the perspective needs to align to that. But actually changing the
yeah.
world to fit that, I don't know if that's the best idea, really.
I don't know if the world has to change as much as the world has to be one that they live in that makes sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? If you tell, like for instance, if I was trying to tell my story in your book, it wouldn't make sense.
Sure.
Because my characters in your world wouldn't make sense.
Right.
But yeah, I think I understand what you mean. It's the same thing essentially. Is that the story in the world is a means to get your character through it. Their journey is in a world. That world is their world.
Right.
It's
You need to
too hard to
advance the plot
separate them
and-
at that point.
I see what you
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pretty much across the board, it's...
The only thing I would say that's a little bit different is with me is that I like world building a lot, but a character idea will inspire me to write. A world will inspire me to research,
Exactly.
and that's about it.
Good point.
That
Yep,
is true. When
that is
I
true.
came up with the idea for the world first, it's very hard to write. Because you're trying to figure out this is a cool place, what happens there.
I want to live there, but I don't know what my characters are going to do.
Yeah, I always start with, it always starts with the character for me. And I just kind of get to know the character. And as I get to know the character, everything kind of, it's like a bubble. It kind of like expands around him, and I start to see everything that he's seeing, and then he'll turn. And I'll be like, oh, that's what's over there.
Right.
That's what's behind him. That's okay. We got it.
That's great, because if you've ever read a book where you really like a character, but it feels like he's almost in a blank place, like you can see like almost blank spots where they don't fully develop the world. So it's just like you have this cool character and this cool plot, but you don't really understand the surroundings.
It's too unrelated to reality to be real, but at the same time, it's not real close enough to anything else to have a frame of reference.
Right.
Yeah, because me personally, I'm one of those people, I like to know what my surroundings are. You know, I don't just, this is all I see.
Right.
No, I'm like, what's behind me? What's over there? So my characters are kind of this, I write my characters the same way.
Right. Well, what made me think of this question is because at our morning meeting, they hand out like trading cards every month that are like author trading cards at work here.
Uh-huh.
And we got Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, right?
We got Brandon Sanderson, and they were like, oh, does anybody want to say anything about him? And I was just like, I really love his work because his world building is amazing. His magic systems all make sense to me. I can understand them. And his character, so it's like he has the full package because like his characters are amazing, his world is amazing, the magic system, you know, he's just got the full
That's how I feel about Raymond D. Feist.
Okay.
His world building is very clean. You don't know how he can all of a sudden pull out historical facts of places that don't exist. And it's done so seamlessly
It's
every
so
time.
amazing when, there's a history to the world and everything.
And it doesn't need to be always there, but to have it be there enriches it. I think that's one of the things that being a really good world builder, I think, is the hardest thing to do when it comes to things like that. You know, I can tell you every mechanic that happens in my world. I can tell you all of that, but to actually be able to, unless I thought about it, I would probably not be able to come up with it just offhand.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's certain things like, for instance, a world like my book set in is pretty much modern day. My sci-fi is 250 years from now. My comic book is World War II. So at least those things are something that I can adjust my view towards. If I want to say that the person walked in the living room, because that just happens to be where they walked into, I don't necessarily need to explain what the couch looks like. I don't need to explain what the drapes look like, or there's a window facing the northeast sun. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. And if my reader cares that much, it's probably not the writer for them. You know, they need to read, Texas. If they want to learn about our surroundings, read James A. Michener. You'll know everything that ever existed. He's the only person I know of who could describe a sunset for 8 pages.
Oh.
And he's great at it, don't get me wrong, but I could never do it, and I can't read that.
Yeah, I can't read that.
But some people are like that. They like that level of detail. They want to be able to watch the artist paint, and I don't want to do that. I'll show them my finished product. I don't need to show them every brush stroke along the way.
So in our other panel, we were talking about what you do to recharge your batteries. And we got some really good answers. I mean, I won't spill the beans on Adam's.
Go ahead and spill it.
I was like, excuse me, what? But the other two people that were in the panel were talking about how they love to watch YouTube videos with people doing creative stuff, to recharge their body. They like to be around other creative people. It inspires them to create. And Adam, what do you do?
Lay in a coffin, climb up on my roof.
He lays in a coffin, and I was just like, excuse me, ma'am?
Hey,
Well then, hey.
somebody's got to do
Someone's
it.
got to.
We were like talking about live streaming.
That's slightly out of context, though, because I was talking about when I was writing a story that I needed to feel like desperately lonely and claustrophobic,
Okay, yes.
and I'm a method writer.
Yes.
That does
That's
make
what
a
I
lot
stated.
more
Okay,
sense.
all right. That
Earlier.
makes sense. I was like,
Everyone's like.
However,
okay.
the coffin was regularly in my kitchen, so, I mean,
in
Like
the
as a
kitchen.
table?
Okay.
kind of.
Kind of?
Kind of.
Oh,
No,
all
it's
right,
kind of
okay.
fancy. I like it.
Storage.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a table with storage.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, kind of.
I like this.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone else have anything they do, like, I don't know, to help them create?
I'm very, I do a lot of crafts. I'll either like paint, draw weird abstract artwork, make jewelry, and then a hat and a scarf.
So just creating makes
Yeah,
you want to create.
Yeah, and if I don't want to, if I want to really recharge and not do anything, I'll just listen to heavy metal for about 3 hours.
That does most things pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I saw making that 5 times. If that gives you an idea. So
I've
yeah,
seen it twice.
yeah.
Not as
I
cool
was
as you.
sorry. Okay.
Saw Iron Maiden 4. Does that count?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah,
It's
that's
a competition.
It is. Who's more heavy metal?
Who's more metal?
You are.
Okay.
That's
You know,
what's
the
my
person
cover.
that has the coffin in their kitchen.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, man, that's pretty rock and roll.
That's pretty metal. Yeah.
With me, I am kind of the opposite. I typically will completely depart the world of fiction, and I read things like autobiographies. I read things like, like for instance, I read Astrophysics in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse
Oh,
Tyson.
yeah.
I watch physics lectures, old ones from 1980 all the way to current. I watch documentaries, or I start doing research about maybe something that's in my head that's not flushed out. I think the last time I did this, I went and researched World War II experimental weaponry for 6 months. Because it wasn't really writer's block, because I don't really think you get writer's block. You just get moments where you're like, I don't know what I want to write.
Yeah.
So I'll go think of something else. I can always force something out of me.
Yeah, I don't
just
like
don't
that.
like it.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't like that.
I don't like forcing things. So I'll just switch pages, go to something else. Luckily, I'm a pretty organized writer, so I can switch projects very easily back and forth. So I can start into another series. I can start in chapter 18 of one series and move to chapter 3 of the next, and then to chapter 7 of that same series, and then chapter 12 of the next.
Wow.
And it doesn't matter to me,
Okay.
because I always know, I always outline everything I'm doing. I have notes on everything I'm doing. I have books that are highlighted and tabbed on everything I'm thinking of at any given moment. And my computer is the only computer that is completely safe for other people to search my web history. Because it is the most boring things you'll ever see in your life.
Oh my god.
It mostly pertains to your research.
It does,
Yeah.
almost exclusively.
Okay.
And eBay.
Yep.
Marcus?
Yeah, mine's almost the opposite. If I start doing too much research before I know what I want to, like if I have an idea and I'm rolling with it, I have to do research, obviously, to learn things. But if I'm like looking for inspiration, I just start reading stuff and just don't stop reading and nothing happens. So like to get new ideas for things to write, usually what I do is I'll start a new activity where I have to meet new people, like join a new club or join a new sports team,
Or volunteer at the library.
volunteer at the library,
Yeah.
get a new job or something,
Yeah.
because meeting new people, new experiences.
He does volunteer at the library.
Are you familiar with all the different various sections of the library? If anyone has any trouble finding it,
Excellent.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. When you put stuff away here, you
But if you wouldn't mind buying his book when you talk to him, he'd like
Yeah.
that's a perk. Okay, so what part does social media play in promoting your work?
Oh.
Uh-oh.
It's a necessary devil.
Yeah.
I think
It's
a bad
evil.
word, or I think it's a misrepresentation of the devil.
I
I don't think the devil's even that evil.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I think he's got better intentions.
yeah. That,
You have to use social
You
media
have
You
to
have
social
to.
media.
if you want to promote yourself in this day and age.
Yeah.
It's a gross thing you have to do.
It's
Yeah.
different when you're a published author by a huge company. They can handle that easily. My problem is I have to tell everybody what's going on at any given moment. I'm not going to do that.
I don't do that.
I'm
I
too
don't
busy
do- yeah,
writing,
I'm too
or
busy.
too busy reading, or too busy living to do that.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
status updates then?
I get
Very,
that.
Every
Very
once
Yeah.
in a while, I status.
I get that
update.
alert that says,
Yeah.
"Hey,
You haven't
no
done this."
one's heard from you on your page in 26 days," and it's like, Oh.
Mine goes off at like 4 hours. No one's heard from you in a while.
I know, it's like, yeah, it's like,
Yes, they have.
I just posted yesterday.
That's right.
Yeah.
I already have talked to them more than my children.
I'll post on Instagram more frequently than the others because
I
that
agree.
makes sense
Yeah.
for comics,
It's easy.
things
All
like
mine,
that.
I have mine
And then,
tied
like,
in.
if you're doing events like this, you know, take a picture. Yeah, and if
Yeah,
I
I
post
tied
on
it.
Instagram, it goes to Facebook,
It goes
it goes
to- yeah.
to Twitter, goes to that. But
Yeah.
I don't post pictures of my kids on Facebook. I don't go on Twitter and talk about this or that with this dumb politician or anything like that. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Now Twitter is evil.
my time is taken up by working. Social media, if I'm going to use it, is going to be a part of work, which
Yeah.
means promote.
Yeah.
And the promotion is hard too because like you have to have your author brand and like I just sort of my author brand is myself, which is I post a lot of sort of jokes and funny stuff online. Then when I write something like this, which is not particularly funny, it's hard because people don't want that from me. Like
Right.
if I post, it's hard for me to promote something like this because I'm like, I wrote this new book. What, is it funny? It's like, no. Promote the stuff that I do online.
If you like me, this is not your book.
Yeah.
Well, you could promote it in like the Facebook groups and stuff. Then
Yeah.
Yeah.
it might find a different audience than just the people
That's what I'm
following
going to
you.
start doing
Yeah.
more.
It's like when you're on Goodreads though, and you go to a forum, a lot of times they'll be talking about something, and an author will just like insert themselves in the conversation and go, "And my book,"
Yeah.
Oh, that's just icky.
I know.
Well, I didn't
No.
mean like that.
No, it's
No.
people are like,
Yeah. That's like called Reddit prostitution.
Yeah, that's
I don't
bad.
like.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I think that as an independent author, I carry my business cards with me everywhere. If I talk to somebody for more than 5 minutes, they have my business card, and it's because I have to rely on the comeback. I have to get people to come back and look for me and find out what I'm doing. So yes, I have to post things, and unfortunately, we're in the age where everybody wants to know everything about everyone. They really are. They want to know your political view. They want to know what you had for breakfast. They want to know what your cat's name is. And so I try to give them enough to where I feel like I'm not working too hard.
well, they don't want to support you if they don't like your cat's name.
And as an independent author, they don't want to support you unless they like you.
Right.
I have plenty of famous authors I don't like, I've met, that I cannot stand, but I support them because I like their work.
Yeah.
I would not do that with an independent author. I'm not going to take the chance on it. This is an established author I've read for 15 years. I met them, they're a douche. But at the same time, they're talented. I have to sell myself, and if I'm doing that, that means I have to give them what they want. And sometimes what they want is too much. So you have to kind of make that line. Like you saying, keep it work. I, for the most part, do that, except for when there's something that I need to get off my chest. I get occasionally too many posts about one thing or too much negative feedback about one thing. Sometimes I will address it. And if I address it, I must have to feel really, really important about it, because I am pretty ambivalent to almost everything.
Right, because you gotta be careful because 5 years from now you could be working for Disney as the head of like a giant franchise.
Like maybe Guardians of the Galaxy.
Number 5.
Even though you've already apologized for it 10 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2,000 tweets.
So, what advice would you give someone just starting out writing genre fiction?
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
What do you consider genre fiction?
Exactly.
Good question.
Yeah, you gotta.
Well, I work in the library. So
I know,
we
your
have-
job is to catalog.
Right,
and
yeah.
organize
Categorize
things.
everything.
Yes.
But when you write stuff, you don't generally sit there and be like,
Sure.
I'm a
I'm gonna
sci-fi
write a
writer right
sci-fi,
now.
yeah.
I'm a horror writer right now.
And some things are really crossover, like, because I'm a reader, I realize I read things that are sci-fi horror, or, that are more, that cross multiple genres. Sometimes they're science fiction and fantasy together.
Yep.
But
More common than not.
I think, for me, it's anything that isn't literary fiction or classics, pretty much.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
as a fiction writer who does not use these and thous.
Okay.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood.
There you go.
I think it's important to read what else is already out there, not just so you don't write the same thing again. But if you want to write the same thing again, nobody can write the same story exactly the same way. But it'll help you define what your version or what your voice of that story is. If you're you know, if you want to write something that's about vampires, there's a million vampire stories, but
Lord.
reading a lot of vampire stories, it helps you figure out what your voice is
Million and
and
one.
things that are not,
So
things that are
vampire.
not vampire stories. Too, figure out, like, what other things in the world are there?
Me too,
that-
actually.
So why
Three.
is red is important in the genre and outside the genre?
I
Yeah.
think so, yeah.
Yeah, a good exercise is actually to find something find one you like, and then deconstruct it, and write it the way you would.
Nope.
You know, change the scene. It was like, you know what? Yeah, that scene is good, but you know what? What if we did it this way? You know, and it actually kind of works because that's what I did.
Okay.
There were stories I liked, and I was just kind of like, you know what? I really don't like that character like that, and I rewrite them.
It's almost like what people do with fan fiction.
Yeah, yeah.
People that though do fan fiction go on to write, fiction that's published.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't really need to talk about it.
No, that's not. We're
No.
good. Yeah.
We aren't going to talk about 50 Shades of Grey ever.
No, we are not. No. Why would
Because
you even
that
bring
is
that
the
up? What's
one
wrong with you?
excuse that everyone gives. Fan fiction writers can be famous too. Yes, they can. They can write Twilight fan fiction that somehow manages to get thrown up, and somebody says, "Hey, you should write dominatrix porn."
It's like, no, we're not.
I think that fan fiction is a fantastic tool to write with. I think that it's a good way for a lot of people to get interested in writing, and it's a good way to decide what your type of storytelling can be.
Yeah.
I don't read a lot of things that I think are close to what I write, because I don't ever worry about telling the same story. My brain is way too scattered to tell the exact same story. My opinions are way too bizarre to ever think that that's going to make it into a book. But I want people to. I want to know. I'm much better at knowing what I don't want to write about than what I do. I'm much better picking up the book Twilight, looking at the cover, looking at the back, looking at the first page that I open it to and go, this is awful, and want to burn it, and realize, well, I'm not writing that one. And it's not because of the fact that I don't think less of the author. The author did their job. Somebody out there likes that.
Right.
But to me, I could never tell that story because of a lot of reasons. Vampires don't sparkle. That's number one, right off the bat. But two, you have to be able to tell the story that you're trying to tell. And the story I'm trying to tell would never be that story. So I'm never going to have corny love dialogue. It wouldn't make sense in any of my writing to do that. I'm never going to have, the meet cute. It makes no sense to me. I don't really care. Now, I would not say I wouldn't watch a movie like that, because I have a teen daughter who makes me do all sorts of crap I don't want to. But it doesn't mean, and I can enjoy things like that. But I like the cross genre more than anything. What's my favorite that just came out a couple years ago? About Time. So About Time is a love story, but it happens to have a time traveler in it.
Ah, that was a good movie.
Oh, okay.
Basically, he gets a chance to meet the girl of his dreams, but loses her phone number. And he has found out that his males in his family are able to travel back through time, or through their own
Oh, I
timeline,
heard about. I didn't know.
backwards and forwards.
Good movie.
And he does. He goes back, but everything he changes keeps ruining things, making it worse and worse. And at one point, he even erases his kid, and that kid becomes a girl instead of a boy who he had been raising. And so it's one of those things that the sci-fi was not the driving force of that, but it was so well done.
Right.
Like, it was a chick flick that I liked a lot. And I probably watched that 4 or 5 times in the same month.
Okay.
Because I did. I really enjoyed the execution of that story.
Okay.
And I couldn't write that, but I could really appreciate it.
But you couldn't use it either?
But I can use it.
Okay.
I can use the things that I liked about that. I can use things like subtle science fiction. I can use things like telling a story or a love story that didn't revolve around things going right. I don't like angst stories. I've never liked will they, won't they stories. It drives me
There's some people
insane.
who love that kind
Yeah, and it drives me nuts. I don't like watching shows where the male lead and the female lead spend 8 seasons. Will they get together?
Like Moonlight.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I would have much rather had that show. After the first season, they got married. 8 seasons later, they could have been divorced and just fine.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that, like, in my book, there is one rule, and that is the 3 characters that start the book are always together, no matter what. And I wanted to tell a love story where there was no drama.
Okay.
And so that's what it is. It's a love story, 3 characters who love each other. It has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with their love for one another. 2 of them happen to get together, but there is never a point where you're like, oh, are they going to make it, or can this work out, or that's not ever part of their story.
Not part of it.
That's not part of their drama. Their drama is the fact that one is an undead succubus, one is a human who happens to destroy things that are evil when he touches them. One of them is a horned rage demon that is actually a 18th century cowboy who got doped up on morphine one day and accidentally killed his daughter. So there's a whole lot of things going on, but they're all about people living horrible lives but are good people, and the fact that they find each other and find that this is a place where we can start to trust each other even though we're in the middle of hell.
Right. Well, I love, like, for me, I love genre. That's all I really read is genre fiction. So I don't think of it as an insult or anything to say genre fiction.
I don't really think it was an insult either. I just get
it's not an
confused by
insult.
it.
Yeah.
It's just that, like you said,
It's
I don't think
undefined
about that.
to a large
Right.
degree.
You know, I write it, and however it turns out.
I think it's
That's how it turns
for
out.
marketing purposes and like for the libraries
Yeah.
to know where to put it.
Yeah.
Because there are people that read in that genre, and that's basically what they read. There are people like, there are patrons, I see them all the time in the SFF section. I never see them anywhere else in the library, but they're
Oh, yeah.
in the graphic novel section, and that's it.
Yeah.
So for those purposes.
That's where they go to get their fix.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, see, I'm in kind of a weird one with this one because it is sci-fi, but because it's vampires, it ends up getting thrown in there with paranormal romance.
Right, and it's not
And
that.
it's not.
All you need is a vampire
Not
to
even-
become a
I know,
paranormal
it's-
romance.
Yeah, and there's no romance in here. I've heard reviewers love the book, but it's not romance. And I'm like, I know it's not romance.
It never
but
intended
it
to
was
be.
never intended to be romance, but it keeps getting thrown in there because of vampires.
I have the same
Because
thing.
they're sexy. And they're, yeah.
There's a young adult book that I wrote that it didn't have any romance in it, but it had paranormal elements, and so they kept editors and my agent just pushing, like it's got to have romance in it, like it's paranormal for teens.
No, it does not.
A really good example of an author, I think, that writes for no audience is Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman writes his books for readers, and so he'll have books like the Graveyard Book that was written, I think they say, tween fiction area, but that's a dark story,
It is pretty dark.
but it is amazingly told.
I think
My
we actually-
son at 10 thinks that's the greatest book ever written, but at the same time, he won't read anything in horror because it scares him. That book was written so well, he never got scared. He got excited. He got interested to try to figure out what was going to happen to these characters. And I think that's just the point of a good storytelling. You're telling a story. What somebody does in a PR firm is their problem. But like when I wrote my book and I had to sign up for my stupid ISBN and I had to tell them what genre it was, I spent more doing that than I ever did trying to figure out what the back cover of my book was going to say. I'm like, well, it's fantasy, but it's urban fantasy, but it's not really like urban fantasy. and it's not really like YA because it's written at a 12th grade level, but I don't know what it is. And so after a while, it wound up as absurdist fiction. It was the only thing I could think of that made sense. I was like, absurdist? That's me!
Are you absurdist as
No,
well?
I did the same thing with this book though. Like I thought it was a dark comedy. Then I had a bunch of my friends read it when I was done, and they're like, "This is not a dark comedy. It's not as funny as you think it is." But then they're like quickly back up, like, "I don't mean that in a bad way. Like it doesn't seem like it's supposed to be a funny book. Like it's sort of a dark book that has funny elements, but I wouldn't say it's a comedy." So
Right.
I'm like, "What is it then?" And they told me. They said paranormal thriller, so that's what I went with.
Okay.
Yeah.
I told you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you kind of have to rely on your reader because I got to be honest, I don't know what I write. I write to tell a story.
Yeah.
If my story ends up being sci-fi, it ends up being sci-fi. But, I mean, stories are pretty much like little amoebas. You just keep feeding them and see what they turn out to be.
Yeah.
You know, every once in a while they change. Sometimes they split off. Sometimes pieces of them fall off, or sometimes they eat each other. You just kind of hope for the best and see what happens.
Oh my God.
So most of you have written something that could be considered horror, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Not Marcus, have you? Something that you consider, well, it's dark fiction.
This could be considered horror.
So what is the scariest book you've ever read?
I've never actually been scared by a book.
You've never, I have a friend who's like that too, nothing,
Damnation Game by Clive Barker.
Yeah, okay. I haven't read that, but I've read other Clive Barker and his stuff
Yeah.
is always
I love
there.
Clive Barker, but that book, that I read it once, and I'm like, I'm good.
His,
I'm good.
I don't know what's going on up there, but it could wrote like a young adult series called Aberrat was the first book,
Mhm.
and my daughter read that, and I read it just to see.
You're like,
Okay, it's really weird.
it is weird. Yeah, he has a total left brain type.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like crazy. But yeah.
You know, what scares people, it's the same things don't scare the same people.
Exactly.
So like it really has to sort of relate to your experience. So like things about monsters or being torn apart or like being like these are things that I haven't personally experienced and like I understand that they're scared, but they don't scare me that much. Like the thing that really like sort of kept me up late one night was in Misery, in Stephen King's Misery.
Oh yeah.
When he has to burn the only copy of his book. Like that's
Yeah, that, oh God, it was horrible.
That
I
was
was like,
pretty freaking terrifying.
like that was like this is the worst thing that could happen. It's a whole book and it's just gone.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
You want to go?
Yeah.
I already
You
went.
said nothing scary.
Nothing
Nothing
scary.
really
Nothing.
scares
Nothing
you.
at all.
I've never read a book that I found scary.
All right.
I
Book,
used
I
to
think-
read Stephen King and Dean Koontz and Clive Barker and all those late at night when I was 9. They don't scare me.
What scares me, I think, is true peril for a character. And not necessarily even, I mean, it can be as simple as somebody who's hanging off a cliff.
Sure.
If the writing is well enough done to give me a feel for that character, that scares me. As far as horror, like terrifying me, no. I can't be terrified by a story. I can be grossed out by a story. I can change or read a different book because it's gone too far and I just don't want to finish it. But I can never be scared, like terrified to the point where I'm going to think about this all night kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, all I got to do at one point is, look at my kid and realize my life's pretty damn good, deal with it. So it just depends. It depends. Like you were saying, monsters being ripped apart doesn't scare me. In all honesty, I would say, what was it? The only movie that's ever really scared me was The Evil Dead.
Oh,
And
Really?
It was
I
because
love
of my
that one.
age. It was because of my age. It was because of I watched it in a cabin in the woods on a VHS and a TV. That was the only thing in the cabin in the woods with my best friend, who was more of a scaredy cat than I was. It was the only time I've ever held a man's hand, and by man I mean 12-year-old boy.
You're feeding off each other's
Yep,
fear,
yep.
probably.
Wrapped in one blanket, trying really hard not to be scared. And like bad special effects I find much more scary than good CGI.
I think that the age that you are when you read the book and the circumstances make a big difference. I read Salem's Lot when I was, I think I was probably like 13 years old, and my parents were on a trip, and I just kept on hearing things on the window, and the idea of looking at the window and not being able to not open it for whoever that, and then you could just feel like the prickles in the back of your neck, and I did get really scared from that, but like seriously, I was really scared.
There are things like that I can do.
Yeah.
But usually if it is, it's a passing fear. It's like, oh yeah, that's kind of scary. I don't really want to think about that anymore. I'll just keep reading.
It is just strange that when you read something and you're like you understand intellectually that was scary, that was scary
that
stuff.
Was well done. That was really
I'm
scary.
I'm not actually scared, but I understand that it was scary. It's a weird disconnection.
Yeah, emotion in book I think is very different because when you're reading a book, you can't not know it's a story. You picked it up on the fiction aisle. It's not real, and so that's a little bit different. When you're reading a movie or watching a movie, it's more visceral because you can see it.
Yeah.
It's more sensory diving. But at the same time, if you're reading something, you can appreciate it much better, I think.
Plus, it's hard to do jump scares in books.
It is hard to do jump scares in books, which to me is the most irritating type of scare you can possibly have.
It's irritating, but my family loves to watch it happen to me. They're just all looking at me to see it when
You're going to jump up in the air. Yeah.
I'm very bad like that, so.
Well, and that's just, to me, it's just an ear-piercing high point in the music that just drives me insane, and I jump off my seat. It has nothing to do with what's happening.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's I'm not really afraid. It's just a visceral reaction to what's happening on screen.
Yeah.
So
You got goosed by the sound.
could you guys give me a little bit of an idea about your writing process? I know you guys work from home, and so how do you stay focused, and how does your day go, from the time you wake up? That type of thing. Just give me a play-by-play.
I still
He
have a
gets out
day
of his
job.
coffin.
I still have a day job.
Okay.
So, well, actually a night job. But on my days off, when I sit down to write, I need people to leave me alone.
You need quiet.
Not necessarily quiet. I have playlists. I put on my headphones, and I do 2-hour blocks
Okay.
because I can write about 1,000 words an hour. So if I sit down for 2 hours, get 2,000 words, kind of go back, go through it, it probably knocks it down to like 1,700. Take a break, do it again.
Okay.
You know, if I can do 8 hours, I'm like gold. If I can kick out 8K in a day, I'm happy. That's my goal. And yeah, my door is closed. Yes, door's closed. Don't knock. I can't hear you. Got headphones on.
Right.
Don't bother me. Yeah.
I just don't understand people who like work in Starbucks. Like how, if like you went there to be someplace where there's noise and distraction.
Yeah,
How is
I
this
just
your process?
So, like for instance, I can't do it at my house. I have to leave.
Yeah.
Because
It depends, yeah.
I have a 10-year-old son who wants me to pay attention to him, and I understand that. And I have a 16-year-old daughter who is going to fight with her mother for at least 6 hours of every day, and so I have to deal with that and mediate that. So I leave. I go to the public library. I put on headphones and I listen to white noise, and I write for about 6-7 hours straight. If I need a break, I start researching, and then I go back to writing. But I can do that. The shortest amount of time I need to write is about 2 hours. But
Yeah.
anything less than that, it's not worth me trying.
exactly.
But if I can get 2 hours solid, I can usually. My goal is to get my thought out of my head. I don't really care how long it is. It may just be like a 7,000 word, chapter. It may be like a 600 word chapter. As long as my idea was finished, I'm pretty thrilled by my life. But there's also points where I've written a sentence and felt very victorious. I mean, I've had moments where I'm like, I have no idea how to start this, and I've thought about it for 15 days. I might as well just write something. And I've also written placeholders on numerous occasions.
Oh yeah.
I type in big bold letters in yellow font, name, and then just write the rest of the story. Character, name, the rest of the story. Because there's times where a character hasn't told me their name yet.
Oh, I got
don't
4 of
know.
those already.
Yeah.
That
I'm
they
like,
still
I
need
really
names.
don't know what I'm going to name you.
Something
Yeah.
important that I learned writing comedy too is if you're stuck on a joke, just literally write joke.
Joke.
And
Yeah,
move
yeah,
on.
yeah.
There's so many times where
Yep.
I've labored for like a whole day on the funniest line in the world, and then 2 days later, like, oh, I'm cutting that whole chapter.
Yep.
So it's like
Yeah.
that joke never sees a light.
Placeholders,
Yeah.
that's important.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Adam?
I don't really have that much of a daily process. Yeah, I own multiple businesses and have 5 kids. So I write when I get the time to. I don't have any set, like, I have to get this much done this week or anything like that. But the closest thing I guess I have to a process is I do not type up anything until I've first written it all longhand.
In your journal?
In my journals. I keep
Awesome.
42 different journals at all times that have just various stories, and if I'm stuck on one or the characters haven't told me what they're doing next or whatever, then I'll just move on to the next one. But everything I do is written like an organic way first. So, if we're going somewhere and I don't have to drive, then maybe I'll write as long as the person who's driving doesn't scare me.
Oh yeah.
That scares me.
That scares me.
My
Yeah.
16-year-old daughter, that will scare me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the back to school sales. Yeah, that's my. I write longhand
I know,
too.
pick up as
Yeah.
many
Pick up
notebooks
as
as I can.
notebooks and be like, yes, and they're like, you have kids?
Nope,
No.
not at all.
When you write your 2-hour block, you write it longhand?
Sometimes I do. It
Sometimes.
depends on where I'm at. Yeah, like I was at work. I did not have my laptop, but I had my notebook. So I kicked out 10 pages in that notebook.
Much easier to carry around.
Yep. And then I went home the next day and I typed it all, and I will fix it later.
I also keep family tree books too for my characters.
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of that way too. Like I said, I'm pretty organized. So each one of my characters, I have dedicated spreadsheets to the fact that their eye color's this, their hair color's this, the length of it is
Oh, yeah.
in this chapter. By chapter 6, their hair length is gone, so that way I know I don't refer to their long flowing hair in chapter 6. And that was all after writing this one and realizing I changed too much about the characters from chapter to chapter to keep up with it all. And I spent more time going back trying to fix those little continuity errors than I ever wanted to again.
Yeah.
Actually, the Red Cross, like online, has diagrams that like emergency responders use. There's like a male silhouette, female silhouette that like they can record like injuries or things when they find people when they're triaging or whatever. And so I use those, and like I will take notes, like especially if it's something like this where through the course of the story people are getting injured, they're doing things like I will like chapter 7 X wound, like this stuff is happening. So I have these, and I can refer to like where chronologically in the story different things are happening to their bodies.
Yeah, because I hate when I see a movie and it's like, wait, didn't he get stabbed in the rib? What
Yeah,
happened?
why is he holding his shoulder?
Yeah, I was like, wait. It's like someone messed up there.
The bullet ruined through the shoulder, and now he's holding his stomach. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Or you watch the stuntman fall the wrong direction, and you're like, I know it was the other shoulder.
Spitting blood because he got shot in the knee.
Exactly. I think there's a lot to be said for being able to whatever method you use to be able to keep as much organized as possible, because you can't do it all in your head, especially if you write multiple projects. You can't.
Yeah.
No matter how good someone is at writing, except for maybe Stephen King. I don't know how that guy writes, and I can't explain it. I just know he sits in front of a typewriter for 26 hours straight, finishes a book, hands it to somebody, and they give him millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it, and I don't want to learn that process because it would drive me insane. But if you can find a way to organize it that works for you. I have an entire book, a little tiny notebook that all I do is I have names in it. Street names, people's names, anything like that. If somebody tells me their name, I'm like, really? How do you spell that? Because sometimes I met a girl named Aisley the other day. I was like, that's kind of a cool name, Aisley. Like, all right, I'll write that one down, I've gotten characters' names off of street signs. I've gotten characters' names off of food boxes, off of the recipe. I'll take it from anywhere. A character will tell you what they want.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes their name is obvious, and sometimes it's like completely out of nowhere, but somehow it fits.
I get them from CD booklets most of the time.
There you go. That'll work too.
Yeah, I have baby
lyrics work.
I got baby name books. That's what I got.
Yeah, I have
Kinds.
a couple of them.
I got
too.
international baby name books, English baby name books, and eccentric, weird baby name books, because there's a bunch of those lately.
Yeah, there really is.
It's like, you called your child what? Yeah.
You should never have asterisks in a name. I'm just telling you right now. I don't care what culture that's from, but that didn't exist.
And as someone whose name's Marcus, like my whole life I've struggled with, is it Marcus with an apostrophe? Marcus apostrophe S? Like I never name a character with an S at the end of the name.
No,
Save yourself.
My real name is James. I hate it. I hate that S on the end. It makes people so confused. So, do you say James's? Sure, whatever makes you happy.
Okay.
It led to me being called James's by my grandmother for years because she couldn't figure out what it is. So now everyone thinks it's hilarious to call me that in my family. Like, all right, whatever. Accept it and move on.
Does anybody have any questions before we wrap this up?
Yeah.
Hit us.
Yeah.
I have a question about imagination. I tend to not have a lot of visualization in my mind. Do you guys all have like vivid imagination?
I started out as an artist, so visualizing something's really easy for me.
All my stuff comes from my dreams. I have lucid dreams, so.
I can have lucid dreams. I just, like, if I close my eyes, I cannot see. It's black.
Huh. I write mine down. I get up, I roll over, and yeah.
You might want to try some exercises on imagination exercises for mental exercises.
Right. Actually, it's called aphantasia.
Yes.
And so I'm an artist as well.
Yep.
And so I'm trying to find that area where, because I think I struggle a lot because I can't visualize things.
You might want to try sketching while you're thinking about it. Like, hey, this person has this color hair. If you can't picture the person, just start drawing a person. What's happening is you're subconsciously drawing what you're thinking. It's bypassing the entire part of your brain that's looking for the image, and your hand is doing the image at that point. It might help you. It might not. I had a friend who had it for a long time, and that's how she got through it, because she was an artist. She did police sketches, but she wanted to actually do art. And so that's how she started doing it. She started working in charcoal, and she would literally just start sketching, and she realized that's what she was thinking. She just could not make it an image in her head.
Thank you.
Me, I'm the opposite. I cannot stop thinking about weird crap.
Right.
I wish I could sometimes, but then I'm like, no, that wouldn't be me.
Vivid imagination?
Well, I find that when you're describing things, I used to take, back when I lived in LA, I took some improv comedy classes. They said, like, when you're doing space work for your scene, and like you're, oh, I'm at the table here and I'm eating a pie. Like, if you do more than like 4 things, like that's as much as a person can keep. So if you're like, I hung my hat over here, then I walked over here and typed the paper, and then if you got like 12 things on the stage, people just lost it. They don't know what's going on. So when you're writing your scenes, like if there are a couple of details that like really stand out and really paint what the picture is, like your audience will fill in like on that blank stage, like they'll see things that aren't there in their mind because
They've been in an office.
They've been in an office. Like I was writing about like a crappy apartment, and I only said that like there was like spaces worn in the carpet, and there was like traffic patterns worn in the carpet, and like the ceiling had like one of those globe lights that had a bunch of dead bugs in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like just those couple.
Yeah,
of
you know
details,
everything else in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I lived it in college.
Yeah.
Twice.
What trends have you seen? Like, I'll say the last year, because I think I saw you at the authors panel here last year. Were you here?
Yeah, that was here.
Yeah. So let's say, like, within the last year, different trends that you've seen with themes in books, in general, and then even like with cover art or art, like with comics. I'm thinking like politically driven stuff maybe influencing, but have you seen other things other trends?
I've seen a lot of people getting away from people on books. It used to be rampant. It was like, this is what my character looks like. Oh, or like in the romance, the paranormal romance, which also goes into the sci-fi. It was the bare-chested dude. People are starting to be like, okay, get sick of that. They're like, if I see one more like bare-chested dude,
just the torso a lot of times.
It's not even the face. It's just like
So that's my statement. It's the 3/4 shot of a woman's midriff from just this left side with a little bit of her hair showing, so you know what color her hair is.
Right.
With a bleeding rose and flames in the background.
Yeah. It's
there you go. You've just described every book that came out in the last 4 years.
Right. Yeah.
If you're looking at urban fantasy, like on Amazon, every single cover is like the protagonist usually is a young girl standing in some sort of dark background with like a glow around them. There's like it's a colored glow, a green glow.
It's
that,
weird.
You see that cover thousands of times.
Yeah, it's.
When I talked to my cover artist, that was the one thing. She's like, well, what do you want on the cover? I'm like, I don't know, but I don't want, and here's a file of 50 different things. I did. That was the first thing I could think of because I couldn't really see it in my head. And so finally we decided on a chapter in the book and went with a picture from the book. I remember when I used to like that because then when I'm reading that chapter, I'm like, oh, that's for the cover, and flip it over real quick to look. I remember those days, and they don't happen anymore because everyone's using the same 6 stock photos.
Yeah.
And stock photos, there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
But there's something wrong with making your book devalued by a cover that is beneath you. Yeah. Your cover needs to represent your work just as much as your writing, if not more, because that's what's going to get their attention first.
Yeah. All the covers that I have, you will not see anywhere else.
Neither.
Nope.
Anything else?
No.
I think we're done here.
All right.
This is great. Thank you so much for
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.